I'm Dr. Chad Larson. As SARS Coronavirus-2 COVID continues to forge ahead, I'm just trying to keep my nose in the books of the scientific literature to try and learn something about how this virus operates, how researchers are using different agents, both pharmaceutical and natural, and what the outcomes are. So the literature is kind of a mixture of what we know about viruses in general and the different parts of the immune system that are influenced by viruses and also influence your sort of fighting and recovery from the virus, and also more current studies that are actually looking at preliminary studies with SARS-CoV-2, and then also looking at studies from back in, probably about 17 years ago when we had SARS-CoV-1, and some studies were done back then, and we definitely learned some things. So as a quick kind of summary of the things that I'm following most closely, and this is in the framework and in kind of the timing of everybody seems to be kind of waiting for the vaccine, to be completed. And there's a time frame that we really should be taking advantage of, especially when it comes to natural medicine. And first of all, the vaccine, as much as we hope it's going to do what a lot of people think it's going to do, it's a very, very, very complicated science, and it's also highly unlikely to not be the magic that everybody's thinking it's going to be. And this virus is going to be with us, for an extended period of time. And also not waiting around for basically the repurposing of medications that already exist. And there's lots of medications fall into this category of things that they're looking at and studying. And I'm following that literature as well. And there's some things, that I think have promise. But more what I want to talk about in this particular conversation is what we're learning about in the natural medicine framework, because we know that everybody knows now that pre-existing conditions matter when it comes to your immune system and being able to fight something like a virus. So that has to be the centerpiece. Well, I'll talk about some specific strategies in just a moment, but as far as diet, that has to be the centerpiece on everybody's mind. And as difficult as it might be, and it's like a confession session when I'm seeing patients that, their eating is not as good as it used to be. They're consuming more alcohol, and their basic kind of, diet and lifestyle, and their kind of the intentions that they had, pre-COVID have changed as they've had to, kind of self-quarantine at home, etc. You know the story. But it can be challenging, but it's in some ways it's about setting your intention. If you set the intention to make certain changes and achieve a certain level of health, then it will influence the decisions that you make on a moment-to-moment basis, but also week by week and month by month. There's some really simple things that you can do, like just making sure that you're really using the overnight time as sort of a fasted period, which is what it's supposed to be. And that's why they call the first meal of the day breakfast, or break your fast. And so it's key to try to extend that period of time, because on average we're consuming in something like a 15-hour eating window per day, and that's only leaving a few hours of just sleep where we're not eating. And there's really, really clear literature. It's very confirmed that if we can just extend that overnight eating period, 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours overnight before we have our first meal. You can have coffee, tea, water, that kind of thing. But before we have our first meal, it really has really key changes to your metabolism by doing that. So that's just a very simple thing that you can do in kind of the dietary management side. And also be mindful of your sweets, sugar, refined processed carbohydrate intake, and your alcohol intake. Those are just a couple key things that you can start doing right away. As far as nutritional supplements and maybe more broadly micronutrients like vitamins and minerals that really have excellent promise when it comes to COVID-19 and kind of supporting your body for the SARS coronavirus. What we're learning is that there's some nutrients that are kind of rising to the top of potentials. And I should just first preface this with saying that the science is early on this, especially with SARS-CoV-2, but we do have good literature of its effect, of these micronutrients effect on another viruses, including very, very close family members to SARS-CoV-2. So one at the top of the list, I'm putting at the top of the list, not in order at all of any importance, but maybe I'll start with one that is kind of one of the lesser known nutrients. It's called quercetin, Quercetin. Quercetin is a flavonoid nutrient and found in many different foods, onions, apples, several other things that, but it also be found in supplement form, in a concentrated form. Quercetin, taken at certain doses, have interesting effect in the body. So you'll remember that SARS-CoV-2 is a single-stranded RNA, and as all viruses go, they're not living like a bacteria. They need your own host cells to replicate themselves. And so what they have to do is they have to kind of have a landing station, kind of a parking lot, and then they have to kind of infiltrate your cell. And this requires several kind of components of machinery in the virus to help open up your cell so they can replicate. So the landing station of SARS-CoV-2 is something called the angiotensin converting enzyme 2, or ACE2 receptor. So this ACE2 receptor, it turns out, can also be occupied by this bioflavonoid natural substance called quercetin. So if quercetin is binding that docking station, that makes it harder for the virus to dock to it. So just from a preventative standpoint, that can be helpful. And there's increasing studies about this. There's also some interesting studies about the combination of quercetin with vitamin C. Vitamin C obviously needs no introduction. Everybody knows that vitamin C is good for the immune system in general, but it also has lots of interesting nuances about how it actually works. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that, other than there's an interesting study that showed that vitamin C could help to sort of potentiate the effects of the quercetin. So taking these two nutrients together seems to have some kind of extra therapeutic benefit to it. Also, we know that vitamin C is just great overall for so many different things in the body. It's an essential nutrient, which means that the body doesn't make it and we can't live without it. That's what an essential nutrient means. We can't make it, human body can't make it. Other animals can make vitamin C, making it not an essential nutrient. It's essential for us. We have to get it from an outside source because we don't make it. And also, we can't live without it. So that's quercetin, vitamin C. Zinc, next on the list. It does something very interesting. It was looked at in many other viruses, and it's been found that it does some interesting things. Zinc supports not only, let's just put it this way, two key components of your, coyotes are chatting back there. I think it's time to move on. Come on, Maya. Anyhow, so zinc is interesting because it supports two key components, or the two key components of your immune system: the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. The innate immune system is like your white blood cells, local inflammation, things where your own immune system can quickly help to sort of gobble up a pathogen like a virus. That's the innate immune system. There's also the adaptive immune system, which is much more specific to the actual bug. In the adaptive immune system, your body makes antibodies, makes these specific antibodies that everybody seems to kind of know about now. Everybody's heard about getting their SARS-CoV-2 antibodies tested, which would indicate that they were exposed to the virus. So this is part of the humoral immune response. We know that zinc helps to support both the innate and the humoral immune response. So very key just in that kind of general immune system way. But when it comes to a virus, it does something very interesting. Remember, a virus, especially an RNA virus, it has a mechanism by which it needs to get into your cell, and it's called RNA polymerase. It's an enzyme that helps the virus infiltrate your cell so that it could use your body's own sort of machinery to replicate itself. And so this RNA polymerase can be inhibited by zinc. So if you take zinc, it could block this mechanism that the virus requires to infiltrate the cell and replicate. So that's really key. Obviously, we don't have any information about SARS-CoV-2 yet and the virus, but we do have some interesting information about a virus called a nidovirus. Nidovirus is in the same, let's put it this way, SARS-CoV-2 is also a nidovirus. So that's some of the dots that we have to connect. We're waiting for the studies to come out about SARS-CoV-2, but it's also, remember, important that sometimes when there's a kind of a low risk and a potential high reward, it might be worth, considering taking zinc even without having the studies specifically about SARS-CoV-2. And I'd say a couple other things. Vitamin D. We know vitamin D deficiency is so common in people who have kind of the worsening outcomes, who have kind of advanced stages of COVID that require hospitalization. Many of them, the vast majority, have been shown to be deficient in vitamin D. We know vitamin D is so key for multiple components of the immune system. And finally, as a kind of a last nutrient that I'll give at least honorable mention to, is called epigallocatechin gallate, EGCG. EGCG is a catechin that is found, it's sort of a polyphenol catechin that's found in tea, green tea, black tea, oolong tea. And they studied its effect on viruses, and it has some interesting effects that helps to decrease the chance of a worsening outcome. So interesting stuff, lots of key nutrients to think about. These are nutrients that I'm suggesting my patients have on the shelf. Get them, have them. If you're going to be in situations where you might be exposed to people that are at, let's just say that you're more in risk of potentially getting coronavirus, like people outside your family, maybe you're going to be in situations where you have to be in closer contact with people. Definitely keep following the public health advice of distancing and of wearing a mask. Those things are key, but there's things that we could start doing to help bolster our own immune response. And so these are some nutrients that I'm keeping my eye on. I will continue to scour the literature looking at these and other nutrients and kind of simplify the information and bring it to you. But these are some nutrients that I would consider stocking up on your shelf, and it's what I'm suggesting patients do. Some people are having to travel. These are the kind of things I'm suggesting that they have with them. So hopefully that is helpful. You learned something. I will keep reading the studies and bringing you the information. Until then, keep it real.